Hello, everyone. Some of you may have seen me in the past. I was a speaker at one of the national conferences, I think 2 years ago. And as Megan said, I've been working with Megan on and off for the past couple of years and the network, as well as a couple other JFS organizations. Before we get into who we are, what we do, and what we are about, just want to welcome everyone to what we're calling a new day, which, yes, is a play on our brand and our organization, which is called a new brand. So just if you are here and you're alive and you're breathing, would love like a hi or a thumbs up in the chat. Don't all rush at once, but just kind of give us a little bit of something to show that you guys are here. Hi, Robin. Hi, Emily. Lana, Rachel. Oh, yes. Thank you, everyone. Matt, thanks for showing up. Oh, another Rachel. Uh-oh. Hi from Toronto, our friends up north. We are getting your smoke. At least here in New Jersey a little bit. How about you, Roger? Roger's in Seattle. Are you getting smoke over there, Roger?
We are clear. We have blue skies in Seattle. If you've ever heard that song, the clearest skies are in Seattle these days right now. And so we're enjoying it.
Wow, incredible. Well, thanks everyone for showing up. We have an exciting day ahead.
Hi, Portland.
Well, Portland, what's up? So a little bit about me, and then I'll let Roger introduce himself. My name is Stephen Picanza. I am located in the great state of New Jersey, but a stone's throw away from Philadelphia. And I have been in branding and marketing for the better part of almost 2 decades now at this point. Whether I've worked, direct with brands or agencies in some parts, I love bringing big idea thinking and great strategies to organizations that need a little help or just need an outside perspective. And I've been fortunate enough to work with Roger Starkweather for almost half that time, for about a decade in many, many different capacities. So Roger, maybe just give everyone a quick little intro on yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you. And no, it's a pleasure to be here and to share a little bit with you guys today. My strengths in this kind of endeavor that Stephen and I have started is kind of the project management side of things. So I am great. I can speak his language. We have great value and tone in terms of like thinking and how we help clients through our processes. But he's really the beauty and the brains behind a lot of this stuff. So we welcome his intelligence, and me. You'll definitely hear from me. I mean, I've got a few words to say, but I sit in the background more than Stephen. So anyway, welcome everyone.
Oh, stop it, Roger. Well, collectively and in our own careers, we've been fortunate enough to work with, again, some amazing brands. We have actively helped the network go through this process that we're about to show you, kind of giving you a peek under the hood. I also worked, very closely with JFS Delaware prior to COVID, from a branding perspective, helping to set up marketing systems and processes, as well as, website and looking at how they can, bring forward a new website. Roger and I also work with Utopia Washington, which is another nonprofit out of Washington, as well as an organization called We Heart Seattle, which is out of, as you can guess it, Seattle, doing great work and helping to pick up trash and clean up the city. And then collectively, we worked with some of these brands that you probably know or use or have seen. I am drinking a Starbucks, and my son did take a Dr. Teal's bath last night. And Roger probably did go to WaFd Bank at some point, but I wish we could say we've been on a cruise recently, but we have not. But these are just, just a glimpse into some of the organizations that we've had the opportunity to impact and to work with.
Well, and real quickly, I think what's really nice about that is that we balance between large, medium, and small businesses, right? So we really do have the breadth to be able to kind of think accordingly. That's all.
That's exactly right. We got a lot of people coming in. So we just want to give you just, when we work with organizations, just how we're able to create some new opportunities. So here are some testimonials from some organizations we worked with, from real estate to a startup. And that name on the bottom that you probably all know, and I know that Megan knows, Basha Silverman. And, I've had the opportunity to work with her not only at JFS Delaware, but here at the network. And so, we definitely um, are extreme fans of the work that and the social work that you all do. And, we are all here for each other. And so anything that we can do to give back to the community and to organizations that are helping the community, Roger and I are very much one to take that on. And as Megan had said in the beginning, this is part of a 3-part series. So it's not just today you get to see Roger and I, but we're going to do it again next month, hopefully from next to some water on a beach or a lake somewhere. And then the month after in September, we're going to do it all again. And each of these talks is tailored to the challenges we see a lot of nonprofits having. And I think, and they're going to kind of span the gamut. Today we're going to talk about rebranding and what that means and why a nonprofit especially needs to focus on their brand to bring in donors and to bring in, new audience members and cohorts. Next month, we're going to talk about this notion of how we can instill big idea thinking into smaller businesses. And so, when we can think big and really connect with our audience, then, we do something that is so important, and that's called mattering, because to us, mattering is the new marketing. And then in September, knowing how much, especially, the way that marketing is set up today and the ecosystem that marketing is, it's it's very much predicated on photography and video. So how can a small nonprofit, perhaps with not a lot of resources, leverage photography and video for social media and for email marketing? How can we leverage photo and video to go from a rented audience, which is on social, to an owned audience, which is in our email? And so we're going to share some tips and tricks and some strategies that hopefully can get you to market yourselves a little bit more effectively and efficiently. All right, so we're going to talk today about this notion of rebranding, and oftentimes when I talk about rebranding, I actually don't even use that word. I use maybe a brand evolution. Rebranding is a tough word, right? It's a hard word. Oftentimes it means like, well, my brand isn't good, so I have to redo it. And that's not usually the case. A redo from the ground up is not usually what we recommend. It's an evolution. How do we go from this to that, right? Because our audience is evolving. Our customers are evolving, whoever our customers might be. And I'm going to use that word, understanding that we might have, we might have an audience that looks to us for a service. We might have donors as our audience. We might have the larger, Gen Pop as our audience. But we're just for all intents and purposes, maybe the word customer is going to come out of my mouth. So I just don't want anyone to be confused. So like this idea of a brand evolution is important. Brands need to evolve, and like that famous quote, it relates here: evolve or die, adapt or die. And we definitely don't want any of the organizations to feel like it's just this Herculean lift. There are ways to make it palatable and to make it a seamless experience, and hopefully that's what we're going to share today. If at any moment you have a question or you want to pop in and say anything, Roger is going to be monitoring the chat. And he just said, please type in any presentations in the chat. And we encourage this. I want this to be interactive. I don't want just to be over here, barking at a screen. This is really a two-way street. It's collaborative. And this is very much one of our core values as an organization, is ensuring that we're collaborative in, when we're working together in any capacity. We don't just go ahead and back to our labyrinth or our lab and come back weeks later with something finished. It's an iterative process. So the bad news, though, everyone, and you might all know this, but nonprofits, they have a really big branding issue. We see it across the board, no matter what kind of nonprofit, no matter what kind of sector you are servicing. More than likely, there's a branding problem there. And, some of these stats are just going to show it. Whereas, 26% of nonprofits have rebranded in the past 2 years. And of those, around half have already experienced an increase in revenue. And that's a powerful statistic, because that's what you want. You want that ROI. You just don't want to rebrand for rebranding's sake. You don't want to be creative for creative sake. You want to make sure that it has a business implication. And so you're seeing an increase in revenue from that rebranding, then you're doing it right. Then you have taken the right right steps? Or how about this statistic? Over half, 59% of nonprofits wish they had invested more in branding and design over the past 2 years. If any of you follow me on LinkedIn, and if you don't, this is a call to action to follow Roger and myself on LinkedIn. I posted something, I think it was yesterday, where the second best time to invest in your branding is today. And people are like, well, that's kind of weird. Why would you say that? And I was like, well, because the first best time to invest in your branding was probably a couple of years ago, right? It's like that. It's that quote about the tree. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So you don't want to always be wishing that you've made that investment. It's time to make that investment. Your audience is going to reward you. 93% of nonprofits believe that creating a strong brand identity can increase donor engagement. That's a huge statistic, because when you can increase donor engagement, more than likely you can increase the money that those donors are giving you or the hours that they're volunteering. And because we are a nonprofit and so much of our business is based on our donors and our volunteers, we want to make sure that that ecosystem and that experience is extremely, extremely strong. And next, 74% say a strong brand identity leads to an increase in reoccurring donations. So, the best thing about, donations are great, but we want those reoccurring donations. We want to make sure that every year, we are on the top of our donors' mind, and that they are wanting to up the ante on their donations and up the ante on what they're giving us. It's how, as a nonprofit organization, we survive.
Hey, Stephen, go
Yep.
back for a second and kind of give your 2 cents on what a strong brand is.
A strong brand is consistent, right? You got to be consistent across every channel. And I know there's a lot of channels out there. I know that there's a lot of shiny, bright new objects. Meta just introduced Threads a week ago, and already 100, there's like 100 million people who have signed up for it, or some obscure amount. So you have to be consistent, and not just from our logo is the same on every platform, but a voice, a tone, sharing value, a consistent brand. Every touch point is accounted for. A strong brand doesn't branch out too much, meaning, over branding and thinking that, everything needs to have a cute little kitschy name and little brand identity that leads up to here, that leads up to there. You're going to confuse yourself as an organization. And if you're confused, your audience is for sure confused. So a brand identity eliminates all of that. It's seamless, it's understandable, and it doesn't leave a lot up to interpretation.
Yeah, it's authentic as well. And so
it is authentic.
So think about your own individuality when we're talking about strong identity and what you're relatable to the tribes that you're speaking to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We want to make sure that we're saying what we do and we're doing what we say, and that there isn't any room for mediocrity, that we're doing everything as a pillar of excellence. And that's achievable by every organization with the right strategy. Definitely. All right. So, ultimately, we don't want you to be left behind. And I know that your audiences don't want you to be left behind either. So Roger and we've made it our mission to ensure that your organization evolves and does great things in your community by standing out and achieving those goals that are set. This is the mission that we bring to every engagement that we take. And this is a mission, that we very much stand behind, because we work with so many small businesses and small nonprofits, which are the backbone of our economy. We are advocates for the causes that you advocate for. All right, let's dive in. There are a lot of reasons to elevate your brand. There are countless reasons to elevate your brand. And I think what we're going to do now is we're just going to give you a couple of those reasons. But before I do, let me just make sure everyone is still with us, because I can't see anything. So please, in the chat, give us once again a thumbs up or a high five or just something, just to make sure that you guys are all still breathing and filling up the mirror with some fog. There we go. We got some chats coming in. Awesome. We got to make it fun. We got to make this fun. Sometimes this could be so boring, these webinars, and not us, not now. So one of the reasons why you might, participate in a brand evolution is your mission and vision have evolved. And, if there's been a significant shift, or even if that mission has expanded or that vision has expanded, or the strategic direction that was set, it might be time to think about how that trickles down, how that gives different focus to different aspects of the brand, because we want to make sure that the alignment between the strategy, the messaging, and the identity ladders up to this change in mission, vision, or strategic direction. It's very important. And a great example is Feeding America. They went through a rebranding and to align with their evolved mission and vision. Their previous brand focused primarily on hunger relief, if you guys all know, but they have expanded their effort and they've expanded their focus. And so the new rebrand really lends to that. And it emphasizes this holistic approach to ending hunger and building stronger communities. So they went from this really singular focus and widened the net a little bit. The next reason why you might consider a brand evolution is outdated perception, right? Because over time, and it's bound to happen to any kind of organization, you're going to develop an outdated or misaligned brand perception amongst your audience. Remember, your audience is getting older and they're changing, and the way that they view your organization might change as well. So by going through a rebranding, it would help modernize the image. It would make the messaging more relevant to today, making sure that the touch points, the marketing touch points that you are on are actually the touch points your customers are on. And really, it just ensures that you're current with societal and cultural context. And again, dispelling any misconceptions or stereotypes. You have to play an active role in your brand. It's not just a passive thing that you set up once and forget about it. There's an active, you have to be an active participant. And a great example is the Trevor Project, which provides support for the LGBTQ plus community. And they recognize that their branding needed to better relate to their audience. And so they rebranded their visual appeal, and they went from this generic logo that looks like everyone else to a vibrant logo that has more design elements to it. And it's got more inclusivity to the design. And it really helped to dispel any of those outdated perceptions you might have on the organization. So they went ahead and took that active role to update their image. And since then, they've been doing tremendous work.
So, Stephen, I think it's really interesting. Go back real quickly that rebranding does not always constitute a visual change, right? It can be as clear as just messaging, right? Or it could be a strategy or a different kind of campaign. So when you're talking about rebranding, don't just think of it as a visual element, even though it's sometimes needed, right? But it can be just as simple as we're not achieving our goals this way, but if you were to rethink and re-narrate our messaging, it could be achieved in another way. So again, a rebranding evolution isn't just visual.
Yeah, that's a great point, Roger. So much of the way we consume content is based on words and messaging. And unfortunately, a lot of nonprofits that we work with, they over message. They use words that are either tone deaf to their audience because that's an inside word within their own organization, or it's just there's too many words, right? We need to meet our audience where they are. A brand is not what we say it is, it's what they say it is. And so if they're wanting shorter words, more design, more videos, or whatever it is, we need to do that to keep them within our brand vortex. Next would be, another reason to rebrand might be this idea of, you're expanding or you're diversifying, maybe you're expanding your scopes of service. And this is, I know it happens a lot. It happened when I was working with Megan at the network, right? There's a new grant and then we're going to service this grant, or there's this new opportunity for us to add value. We need to get into this particular sector. So, or you might be entering a new geographic region. There might be emerging marketing, or different demographic groups that we want to be working with, right? So as the organization diversifies, the branding needs to once again be aligned to how to the growth plan. And so a fresh brand, again, it could be messaging, it could be a combination of messaging and design. Those small tactics is what we often are tasked to figuring out, but it's really gauged to help capture the attention and trust of our new target audience and our community. And a great organization would be like Pencils of Promise. And they started focusing on building schools in developing countries. And as they expanded their efforts to include teacher training and education programs, they underwent a rebrand to reflect this. They updated their brand, they updated their messaging to really highlight the diverse communities that they are working with. And they just made their brand more relatable to their audience because of this expansion that they saw. I touched on it earlier, but merging and partnerships, and this is big within, I know, the NJHSA community, and with all the JFSs around the country and into Canada, there's a lot of partnerships, and there are mergers, and there are acquisitions that happen. When I was working with JFS Delaware, it's when they were doing a merge with I think Cancer Connection, or I forget the name of the organization, but it was a very specific cancer organization that was getting merged into JFS. So from an architecture perspective, how does that work, and how do we message that, and how do we talk about this specific kind of new offering that we have? And so it's essential to look at your brand, and it's essential to make sure that that organization is represented within this unified brand identity, and that those shared and combined strengths, values, and goals in the organization are really cohesive, and everyone could buy into it. All the stakeholders and the audience, and everyone can understand that this is like a natural evolution. It's not just sticking something out there and hoping that it jives, right? We want to really make it seamless. Audiences expect that nowadays. And a great example would be the Institute of Cancer Research in the UK, which was two organizations coming together to merge, and they needed a rebranding to reflect that strong partnership, and to reflect those combined strengths of both organizations. And so in this case, it instituted with a name change, and a different lockup of the logo. And again, those colors are also represented throughout the website, but it's not nauseating, right? It's subtle enough to where you understand what the organization is about. Next might be, hey, we just need to be different. Perhaps you are amongst you are in an area where it's crowded. And that could be from a geography perspective, from a local marketing perspective, or it could just be from a myriad of different ways. But if you needed to stand out from the competitors and create a unique positioning, you might want to look at your brand. And when working with Megan and the team and Ruben at the network, this was something that we really looked at. How can we set ourselves apart as a pillar of excellence within the Jewish human service community, and really, draw our line in the sand? And so we wanted to create distinctive assets and a distinctive kind of flagship experience to say, hey, we're investing in ourselves, because by doing so, we're investing in you being, the members that make up our community. And by doing so, we're going to naturally attract more supporters, donors, volunteers, sponsors for events. It's going to create this really positive momentum. And a great organization I'm sure we've all heard of is Charity Water. They differentiated themselves by adopting a very unique brand, and their focus is on transparency, and their focus is on innovative storytelling. If you go to their website, if you look at their ads, they're bringing stories from the communities. It's not typical advertising. It's also not necessarily what I would call in the ad industry purpose marketing. It really is just their authentic self, but they're doing so in a way that really differentiates them from the competitors. And what you're getting yourself into. And, they really are advocating and growing and nurturing a really socially conscious audience. And it's all in there. It's all with this mindset of just being different. Next might be if, unfortunately, you have a bad reputation, something happened, there's bad press, there's bad PR, and it happens. It happens to a lot of organizations. In fact, one of the organizations that Roger and I are working with in Seattle came to us through this very lens. There was some bad publicity out there, and there are ways that from a SEO or Google perspective that we can suppress those, that bad press. But ultimately, how do we use this challenge and reputation as a springboard to rebuild trust and to restore the reputation? And so perhaps it might start by, hey, we need to rethink our brand strategy. We need to have different messaging that perhaps combats what is being said or debunks what is being said. We want to convey.
Or put a spotlight on the positive,
Yeah.
reshift the narrative. Yeah.
No, that's exactly right. Because we want to reshifting that narrative is we want to convey that this transparency and accountability and this, commitment that we're making not only to stakeholders, but to the community. And oftentimes, especially this organization in Seattle, they came to us, they had a little bit of a reputation issue. They thought that it was doom and gloom, and I hate to use that term, but oftentimes it could be used as a positive, and it could be used as an opportunity with the right mindset and with the right guidance, because there are some really tactical things that would need to be put in place to use it as a positive. And again, a great example would be the Susan G. Komen Foundation. They had a tremendous scandal, significant scandal, and they underwent a rebranding effort to rebuild trust and again restore their reputation. And it took them a considerable amount of time. Not only were they refreshing their visual identity, they still kept a lot of the same tenets and a lot of the same core of that of their brand, but they really wanted to emphasize with their messaging this transparency and integrity and their commitment to their audience and to the cause. And now a lot of us don't even remember the scandal or can recall what it was, but at the time it was really significant. But now again, we think of them as that, for breast cancer awareness and research, they are the pinnacle. Perhaps there might be strategic organizational change happening within, your nonprofit, maybe new leadership or restructuring, redefine strategic plan. And this is really common. There's always, I know sometimes a revolving door around leadership, and there's always, a magnifying glass around the strategic plan and what's happening over the next couple of years. And so when you can align that strategic plan with your brand strategy, it's going to make your marketing efforts that much more seamless. And, we're not going to need to play the guessing game, and it's going to create excitement around the organization. And Goodwill is a great example of that. They went through a rebranding as part of an organizational change, and they, it was a new look and feel, some new messaging. They're expanding into workforce development, which I know a lot of us as organizations are also expanding into, and they just needed to become a friendlier face to the community. We all knew what Goodwill was, but now we can have a new, kind of found excitement around what they're doing because of their rebrand. And finally, sometimes you just need to revitalize the brand. It's old, it's stodgy. I'm moving into a new house that had a ton of wallpaper. I just need to redo like the wall. So we're ripping out wallpaper or repainting. It's kind of the same analogy, as things evolve, trends change. As trends change, our audience becomes accustomed to it. And if we are not changing to keep up with it, then we're going to be seemingly be left behind. And the World Wildlife Federation is a prime example of that. They change their logo and do a lot of refreshing to continuously stay relevant and to stay active with their audience group. And, we all recognize the panda symbol and the symbolism that's within the logo of the W, but it's there to appeal to different generations. And again, to be relevant and not to be your grandparents' nonprofit organization. All right. So before we move on to this next section, any questions around when to identify that you might need a rebranding or brand evolution? We'd love to hear the questions.
Or more specifically, had any one of those elements resonated with you?
Yeah. So please just share in here.
And if they did, just feel free to jot them down.
Yeah, definitely. We will address the questions, at the end. All right. Whoops. So next, okay. Whoops. All right. So once you've identified, hey, I think it is time to go through a rebranding or a brand evolution or a refresh. Well, what are the right steps, Stephen and Roger? How do I know what to do and who to hire and how to go about this? There's 1,001 articles on Google, and ChatGPT is only going to give me a certain glimmer of it. So what do I do? So I think the first part is, and we just covered, is assess the need for rebranding, evaluating your current identity and strategy. It's alignment with your mission and vision, identifying any challenges or gaps in your existing brand that might indicate, right? It's almost like, Roger and I often take on the physician role, the doctor role. We need to diagnose. And by diagnosing what's going on, we know where to put emphasis. If you come in and tell us your leg hurts, I will not be x-raying your arm. I'm going to x-ray your leg. But again, I might want to be checking your heart and all your vitals to make sure that we're not missing anything. Next is, everything we got to do is rooted in data. We want to understand our target audience, their demographics, their values and preferences, because we're building a brand that's going to resonate with them. So we need to understand our audience. We need to, understand what makes them tick. And we want to understand also the competitive landscape. How do we fit within our competitors? Where's our line in the sand? How are we going to quote unquote win? And win might be win revenue from donors or win from, getting more customers or more people to engage with our services. There's a different ways to win, but ultimately that's what we want to do, is how are we going to set up that plan? And next is defining that brand strategy. So being able to clearly articulate an updated mission, vision, values, maybe your unique selling proposition or your unique value proposition, establishing your brand voice, your tone. How do we speak to our audience? And on what channels, and does it change per channel? And it should, right? How you speak to someone on TikTok, for example, is going to be a lot different than how you speak to someone on LinkedIn. And it's also going to be a lot different than how you speak to someone via email. But we don't want to play a guessing game. We want to be a little bit prescriptive here. And so this is all stuff that we, include in our brand strategy. It's that guidebook so you can make the smartest marketing decisions possible based on data, based on how it affects and impacts your strategic plan and your business plan, essentially. Next would be develop that rebranding plan, right? Because, okay, it's great to go through the process, but what happens, when do we turn the website on, and when do people get email signatures, and how do I coach my staff on using this brand, and what are the goals and milestones? And so, we want to put that robust plan together with you so that you're not left in the dark on saying, what now? I don't want to, those questions of what now should be switched with what if, right? What if we reached our staff like this? And what if we told everyone like that? We want to be proactive when it comes to announcing our rebranding, because there's a lot of facets. It's not just, again, training our staff, but there's PR involved, there's social media involved, there's going to be perhaps some media interviews involved. We need to be blogging about it, right? We need to create a really robust action plan so that we're coming off as authentic and prepared, and so that the rebranding doesn't fall flat, that it makes the biggest splash possible. We really only have that one opportunity to make a first and lasting impression with the organization. Next would be this idea of engaging stakeholders. And there's a fine line here, and this is what Roger excels at. When do we bring in the stakeholders? And we don't want to have too many cooks in the kitchen. Nothing's going to get cooked. But we need to get input and feedback on certain initiatives. So we really need to have a plan on when, where, why, and how we're going to engage stakeholders, and what their expectations are. And those stakeholders might be a CEO and or a president of an organization, or perhaps it's a board of directors, directors, or when I worked with JFS Delaware, we created kind of like a think tank of some past donors, some volunteers, some staff members, and this was our validating committee to making decisions. And it really, really was an effective way to continue to move the project along and not be paralyzed by analysis. Paralysis by analysis can very much, derail a rebranding process.
And I think there's a real big, strong magic in some of the stuff that Steve and I get to do, because we have collective skill sets that complement each other. And one of them is just, I'm like totally down on setting expectations and moving something forward with a milestone and a task and an alignment. And if that's accomplished, we mutually then all move forward together into the next phase, the next level. So that's been really, really kind of like exciting to be able to bring to our projects. And I think if anyone's ever thought about a project and how daunting it might be, Steve and I have pretty much dialed in a methodology to make it more easy to go through, more simple, more effective.
Yeah, seamlessness is a big part of what we strive for in everything that we do. So as we're going down the list, if it includes, creating a new visual identity, we might go through mood boards. We might develop a new color palette, look at fonts. Roger and I are working with another organization in the Pacific Northwest where, we created them this whole new brand identity. Started with mood boards, and we looked at different font and iconography and color palettes, and, based on their existing brand, but how do we take it to that next level, and how do we future-proof them for the next 10 to 15 years, and really anticipating, where their audience is moving to. So creating that visual identity is so important, and it ensures consistency across all the touch points that are out there, including your website, your marketing, your social, your email, any way that any way that you communicate to your brand. Next is also going to be, and a lot of these work in tandem. They're not as easy as step one, go to step two, to step three. We work on a lot of these in tandem. Update your brand messaging, right? We want to craft compelling and consistent messaging that it communicates the organization's values and mission and impact. And there's going to be some key messages that, are meant for different audiences. We live in the age of personalization, and we need to take advantage of that. One message does not fit all, right? It's not like one tagline is going to be the one message that everyone resonates with. A lot of times, Roger and I recommend this notion of living lines. Each audience might have a different living line, or each audience might have a different call to action that speaks directly to them. And this is shared between, B2C, B2B. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we're people serving people, and that doesn't change. And so how can we use the right messaging to tell our story effectively? And how can we use the right messaging that's going to really allow our audience to perform whatever action we want them to perform? Sign up here, read this, do that, donate now. Next, we have to implement the rebrand, right? Easier said than done, but we got to roll out the new brand identity across social, across the website, online, offline. Is there signage we need to update? Do people need different signatures, marketing collateral? There's 1,001 different ways to implement the rebrand, but without a plan, it's going to be like going to the dentist and getting a root canal every day for a whole quarter. It's going to suck. And I don't know why I said that. That's not a good feeling, but it's not good. And we really want to eliminate that. And so having that right plan will allow the rebrand to go very smoothly, and for, again, the organization to be seen as the pinnacle of excellence within the community. And then finally, right, how do we monitor and evaluate, right? Launching the rebrand, launching the website, that's awesome. Then what? What are the milestones? What are the check-ins? How do we continuously align performance based on what our goals are? How do we elicit feedback from staff, from donors, from everyone in our community to make it better? In this case, having 2 ears and 1 mouth is a good thing, right? We need to listen more. We need to take everything in. And because, it's iterative and it's always evolving. It's not one and done. It's like very much like fashion in the sense, like you don't just buy a pair of jeans and be like, I'm good. No, you got to buy different shades and different jeans. Jeans are getting worn out. You got to buy a new pair. And so we always want to constantly monitor and evaluate. And one of the things Roger and I do is we recommend, biannually or like twice a year. I think I said that right. Twice a year check-ins with the brand. And then we usually loop one of them into like a brand planning session. And it usually happens around now. Let's start looking at 2024. Let's get ahead of the curve. Let's be proactive because there's bound to be a lot of reactiveness. It's the nature of the industry that you are all in, but that does not excuse some of these tentpole moments that where you can be proactive. And finally, and like I was saying, how to sustain and evolve that brand. We develop brand guidelines. We make sure everyone sticks to them. And again, that review, that twice a year review is so paramount. And it's such a smart investment just to ensure that your brand is on track. It's like going to the dentist, making sure you don't have cavities and you don't develop the disease known as gingivitis.